When it comes time to building a material in Max, you're going to be using a very special part of the program called the Material Editor. You can kind of think of it as your very little own paint shop. Now, what we're going to do in this video is give you a quick tour of its interface. The Material Editor can be opened a couple different ways. First, if you go into the toolbar in the upper right-hand corner, we have a little icon here that looks like four little balls. You can click on this or just use the keyboard shortcut command M. So here's the way she looks. Probably most prominently displayed are going to be the 6 gray balls that you see at the top. These are referred to as sample slots. The sample slots are where you're going to build and edit the materials that you create for your scene. Notice that only one of them has a white box around it, meaning that it's active. It's very simple to activate a different sample ball by simply clicking directly inside that slot. Notice also that we have a couple of row of icons that help in building your materials, one going horizontally below the sample balls, and then one kind of writing down the right-hand side. If you put your mouse over at the top of any of those icons, you'll get the actual name of the command. Now, the layout of the sample spheres can indeed be changed. A couple different ways we can do this. We have an options icon on the right-hand side. We can go ahead and click on this. This is just basically a bunch of settings that control how the sample spheres display. Specifically, if you look at the bottom, we have a category called slots. So you can very easily change from 3x2 to 5x3. Let's go ahead and say OK. Now you can see how the layout has indeed changed. Or you can do the same thing by simply right-clicking directly on top of one of the sample slots and changing from here. Let's go to 6x4. Now, inasmuch as 24 is the maximum number of sample balls the material editor can contain, be aware that you're certainly not limited to making only 24 materials for a given scene. You see, once a material has been built, it can be applied into the scene, and then that ball can be cleared off for another use. There's actually an easier way of changing the configuration and layout by simply, again, keeping your mouse inside the viewport. Let's just use the keyboard shortcut letter X, and you can see we can actually toggle through our 3 different layouts. If you put your mouse in between where the sample balls intersect, you'll see a little black hand that comes up, and you can now hold that down, and you can navigate through going this direction also. Now, if you'd like a bit larger version of the sample slot, all you simply have to do is to double-click directly on top of that slot. A little floating window comes up that can be resized, and then any type of changes or updates that you make inside the material editor will automatically be made in this larger viewing window. Let's go ahead and close that. Now you'll find that when building designs or patterns into your materials, some may very well show up better on a different shape other than a sphere. So if you go to the icon in the upper right-hand corner under Sample Type, you can actually change that slot either to a cylinder or into a cube. For the time being, let's go back to sphere. Now, a couple of things you need to be aware of. There's an area a little bit below the horizontal icons where you can name your material. Let's go ahead and type in Linda. To the left of that, you're going to see an eyedropper. This is going to be used to retrieve materials out of your scene. To the right of that, you have the button named Standard. Now, if you click on this, these are all the various types of materials that you can build in Max. We'll be looking at several of these a little bit later on in the chapter. If we close that up and go under the Shader Basic Parameters, and again under the name Blend, these are referred to as shaders. These settings control how the light in your scene responds to the surfaces that you're creating. And they'll go a long way in making a surface either look like plastic or possibly metal, or maybe carpet or even skin. Again, each of those responds to light in a slightly different way. Now, below this area, under Basic Parameters, you have the main controls that you'll be using when creating a solid color. And I'm referring specifically to the words ambient, diffuse, and specular. Notice that they also have color swatches to the right. For a greater level of control over the shiny area, you have a category called Specular Highlights. Again, we'll be showing you all this in the upcoming videos. A little further down, you have Extended Parameters, some advanced controls for things like transparency and reflection. And why don't we go ahead and close that up and immediately skip down to the category called Maps. Let's go ahead and open that. Now, the Map section is the real meat of the material editor when you start to build more complex materials. And by that, I mean a material that might incorporate some kind of design or pattern. Believe me, we're going to be spending a ton of time here. You also have a category by the name of Super Sampling. Now, this is a little bit more advanced, but it offers the opportunity of adding an additional calculation or two into the material to basically improve the more subtle qualities of its appearance. A little further down, we have a category called Dynamic Properties. Now, these controls allow you to set up physical attributes like elasticity and friction to an object when you're doing something that's referred to as a dynamic simulation. Now, that's a special effects term that would be used for maybe making a ball bounce correctly. or having it accurately respond to coming into contact with something else in the scene. Below the dynamic properties, you have an area called the DirectX Manager. Again, a little bit more advanced stuff here, but you use this when building materials that'll be imported into a video game. And now, in a nutshell, the DirectX Manager allows you to match up the accuracy of how well the material looks inside the Mac's viewports with how well it's going to end up looking once it's imported into the video game environment. And last but not least, you have a category way down at the bottom called the Mental Ray Connection. Now, this is a very special set of controls that you'll use specifically when using the Mental Ray Rendering Engine. We'll be showing you how that all works in a later chapter. So that should give you just a real quick rundown of some of the stuff we'll be dealing with over the course of this chapter. You get a little practice, and I promise you're going to be absolutely amazed at some of the stuff you're going to be putting together. Now, in our next video, we're going to take a look at a few things you need to know about building a basic skin. That's really where it all starts. Let's go check it out.